What's up, everyone? In this video, we're going to be talking about how Michael Burry sold all of his stocks except for one. We're going to be looking at the stock he's still holding more in depth, but we're also going to talk about what really no one else is talking about with this situation overall. So if you don't know already, Michael Burry is the guy who is known for timing the market crash in 2008 and 2009. Basically, he's kind of like the star of the movie The Big Short. That's an awesome movie, by the way. It's definitely worth watching. But long story short, he's known for timing the market crash correctly in 2008 and 2009 and making a ton of money in the process. So when you hear headlines like we're seeing now on how he sold all of his stock except for one company, it definitely raises some eyebrows. So looking at basically what happened. So basically he manages Scion Asset Management. He owned a bunch of stocks like Google, Meta, BMY. He owned a couple. He owned like 12 stocks or so, and he sold all of them, but he's only holding one of them, and that is GEO, which is a private prison stock. But here is where it gets interesting. So even though he sold all of his stocks, he had around $300 million of total assets under management for his fund. But with GEO, which is the only stock he's holding, which is currently trading for around $7.75, he is only holding $3.3 million worth of that stock. So I've been hearing a bunch of people talk about GEO stock lately and talk about how, Michael Burry sold everything and is all in on GEO, which is he's only holding GEO stock, but it's only $3.3 million on a fund that's worth around $300 million. So it's like, there's some confusion right there. So keep that in mind. Another important thing to keep in mind is while we're just learning about Michael Burry's trades as of yesterday, he actually made the trades on June 30th. Basically what happens is these giant whales, when they make trades, we don't get to know about it right away. It takes a couple weeks minimum for the public to know about it. So that's why you hear everyone talking about it right now. But when you look at some of his holdings like Meta or Google and any other of his holdings that he sold out on June 30th. You know what I mean? So it's like the stock market has done pretty well since June 30th. So, he's also in GEO since June 30th too. So it's just something to keep in mind because it's not like he necessarily bought into these trades yesterday. And, it's just something to keep in mind. Another important thing to keep in mind is that the stock that he did buy is a private prison stock. So you can take that however you want. They do a lot with private prisons and just rehab facilities and even some processing centers for immigration and stuff like that. They have multiple locations around the world. Basically looking at GEO stock, right now it's at $7.72. Its all-time high is right around $34 or so. And it's at a decently low level, as most stocks are right now. Looking at it even more in depth, we can see the market valuation or market cap for GEO is just under $1 billion. Now, their net margins are pretty small, you can say. In this past quarter, it was around 9.1%. The quarter before that, it was around 7%. And then when you take the average over the past 4 quarters, then their net margins are only 3.5%. So, it's not the best, obviously. They also have a decent amount of debt, around $3 billion, but it's not as bad as it sounds for this industry. It takes a ton of money to build the facilities they're building, and, generally with real estate businesses or anything of that sense, you do see higher debt levels sometimes. Looking at some of their other revenue some of their other data points, their revenue has been pretty flat over the past couple of years, to be honest. If you look at almost any other company out there, and I know I'm cherry picking big time right now, but if you look at Apple over let's say the past 10 years, their revenue exploded, right? They went from $156 billion. It went from $156 billion in annual revenue in 2012 to $365 billion in annual revenue for 2021. Now, if you look at any other company, for the most part, you see decent revenue growth. GEO, on the other hand, has been it's been growing, which is good, but not at an awesome pace. In 2012, they had an annual revenue of $1.48 billion. In 2021, they had an annual revenue of $2.25 billion, which is good, but their revenue actually peaked out in 2019 and has been declining ever since. In 2019, their annual revenue was $2.47 billion. 2020, that dropped to $2.35 billion, and then 2021, $2.25 billion. So it's like, it has been declining, which is pretty interesting, especially considering over the past couple years, almost every single stock and company has had increasing revenue. Looking at GEO a little bit more in depth, we can see their cash levels at $587 million. Total assets around $4.56 billion. Total liabilities right around $3.5 billion. And total debt around just under $3 billion. So keep that in mind. Looking at GEO in terms of the charts, right now they're at $7.75 or so. Like I said, the all-time high right around 34. But what is interesting and what I'm looking at is this blue line all the way at the bottom. This is the price to sales ratio. Basically what it shows you is how much you have to pay for $1 in revenue. So we can see, for the most part, you can say GEO averages maybe 1 to 1.25 in price to sales over its existence. And right now, the price of sales is around 0.4. So basically what you need to know is that, let's say historically, on average, the price to sales ratio for GEO was 1, right? That means for every $1 in revenue that GEO brings in, you have to pay $1 in terms of valuation for that. Now, let's say it's 0.5. That means for every $1 in valuation you pay for GEO, you get $2 in revenue, which is awesome. So it's nice to see their price to sales ratio low on an absolute basis, but also on a relative basis. And then also looking at estimates for GEO, they are expected to grow revenue by around 4% this year, and then next year around 4.3%. So, is it a bad play? No. Is it the best play ever? No. What I just really want to emphasize is that, Michael Burry, even though this is the only stock he's holding, it's only $3.3 million. And honestly, that's nothing to a fund that has $300 million to play with. So keep that in mind. What I do like about GEO is that it's pretty oversold. It is not too correlated with the S&P 500. It kind of does whatever it wants, which is a good thing, especially in this market. But this is like a very niche stock. A lot of these private prison stocks and companies really depend on what the government decides to do in terms of policy, and then also just it's a very political industry, you can say, for private prisons. So overall, I hope this video just cleared up some of the things with Michael Burry selling his positions and stuff like that. So while Michael Burry is very widely known for his amazing Big Short trade, there are some things I disagree with related to Michael Burry. Looking at some of his deleted tweets, we can see the S&P. He said the S&P 500 completed a 22% 2-month rally, and the NASDAQ a 43% rally. The S&P 500 would fall another 42%, and the NASDAQ another 48% by the bottom post-WorldCom in late 2002. He said you can't shake that silly pre-Enron, pre-9/11, pre-WorldCom feeling. And we can see another deleted tweet where he says, the silliness is back. After 1929, after 1968, after 2000, after 2008, the strain of silliness that transformed bulls into bubbles completely and utterly disappeared. But that familiar COVID-era silliness is not dead yet, like 2001 before Enron, before 9/11, before WorldCom. Yes, that's a valid point, but I feel like the big thing that he's missing in this scenario is that not every market correction is like to 1929 or 1968 or 2000 or 2008. There have been many, many, many market corrections that are nowhere near the magnitude of 1929 or 2008. You could say the same thing about recessions too. You know, when you mention the word recession, everyone instantly thinks, what happened in 2008? Obviously, it was a disaster. But there have been many recessions where it was not even close to as bad as 2008. So it's important to keep in mind when reading any market crash article or anything about a dip or recession, especially when the word recession gets thrown into play. Not every recession is like 1929 or 2008. It's very possible to see a recession that you don't even notice. A lot of people don't even notice this, but we did have a recession in early 2020, but that was unique and it was different, you know. But when you hear the word recession, everyone thinks 2008. So I hope this video helped you guys. Obviously, it's not every day where you see someone as famous as Michael Burry selling everything just like that and then holding one stock. It's definitely a rare event, so hopefully this video cleared some things up for you. Let me know your thoughts on this situation in GEO stock in the comments down below. If you are new here, make sure to subscribe. I post brand new videos every single day, and let's have a great trading week.